you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Livin the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream. What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you from beautiful sunny San Diego. And in today's MEGAphone episode, we will be again shouting out one of my favorite continuous glucose monitor companies, Levels. They are constantly sending out information, articles, blogs, and studies, just tons of content on how to improve your health. And based on the huge amount of data that they're collecting from people just like me who are wearing these continuous glucose monitors, and they report on their app what it is that they're eating. They are seeing what that food is doing to their blood sugar specifically. They're logging what type of exercising and stresses that they're encountering. And then they're seeing what effects those stressors are having on these people's blood sugar. They're even getting data on how things like sleep or lack of sleep is affecting people's health through these metabolic pathways. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. The article that they sent out, written by author Jennifer Cook, was so incredibly informative, and I'd like to share it with you. Now, every day, I'm having a conversation with someone on how they get terrible sleep. And then in the same breath, they tell me about how they can't achieve their goals, how they can't figure out why they're always so sore. Or they tell me that their doctors now have them on this medication or that medication, and they just so desperately want to get off of it. But they have to wait until this point, or they have to wait until they get this blood marker done. We as a culture just haven't pieced together the true importance on something that we spend, or that we should at least spend about a third of our life doing. We take pride in working ourselves into the ground, sleeping when we're dead, pulling all-nighters just to complete a task and then bragging about it, substituting sleep for something else that we feel is just more important. Things that range all the way from your family to social events with friends to binge watching 16 hours straight of Squid Games. Look, we all do it, just in different ways. So after listening to this episode today, it's my hope that even if we don't completely remove our Netflix binges or our late night get-togethers, or even our dedicated, driven overtime projects for work, even if we don't change any of those things, we are still going to be able to understand the impacts of what lack of sleep and not investing in trying to get better quality sleep is doing to our health, specifically our metabolic health. Now, I know metabolism gets thrown around, but remember, metabolism is defined as every single chemical process that occurs within a living organism to maintain that life. It is a process by which our body converts what we eat and drink into energy. During this complex process, calories in your food and beverages are combined with the oxygen in your body to release the energy that your body needs to function. And sleep is one huge factor that maximizes this process. And our body and metabolism can function on so many levels. We can just barely scrape by and survive. We're really good at that. Running on fumes. We can be the average or the normal, whatever that means. And in America, it's not great to be average or normal when it comes to health. I think we already all know this. Or we can all strive to be optimal. It's our choice. And it's ours and only our responsibility. Not your doctors, not your personal trainers, not any of your coaches, not your family or your friends. Not those really captivating social media experts that you follow. You are the CEO of your own health, and we make the choices that impact our lives. We invest in the work or we don't. And then we reap the benefits. We reap the results from our choices. Sleep is one of the largest pillars to impacting whether we are a healthy human being. And healthy humans are happier. We are more impactful humans. Healthy humans put less of a burden on our societal systems, such as the healthcare system, as well as less of a burden on our family and our friends. We have a full cup from which we can pour and then share and care for others. Healthy people have energy to invest in the things that they care about, in the community that they live in, rather than worrying about what's going on inside of themselves, never feeling just quite right. Healthy humans make a conscious effort to prioritize sleep, and in turn, they gain more control of things like their weight management, the stresses in their lives that the world has to offer. They gain energy that they didn't know was possible. And they take control of their overall health and wellness. So today, we're going to talk about the relationship between sleep and weight loss and a healthy metabolism. And at the end, we will even offer you 9 tangible tips for better sleep. We also have a large library on sleep content here at the Livin the Dream, including other podcasts, other books, and other sleep experts to follow. If you'd like to dive in deeper, just message me. I'll send you years worth of content that I have saved up to help you become a better sleep master. So this incredibly insightful article by Jennifer Cook is titled "The Relationship Between Sleep and Weight Loss." Poor or limited sleep can drive metabolic dysfunction, make healthy weight management way more difficult, and it does this through multiple mechanisms. So here's what she had to say in this article. Anyone trying to lose weight typically focuses on diet and exercise. Those traditional levers, which involve cutting back on food intake and then ramping up workouts, these are based on the calories in and calories out concept of shedding pounds. But there's a growing awareness that this rudimentary math of this approach misses some critical contributors to successful weight loss. Increasingly, researchers believe that what you eat and its impact on your metabolic health play a more significant role in weight and obesity, and sleep can be a vital component of this model. Sleep is linked to several hormonal and metabolic processes that keep your overall metabolism in a state of homeostasis, or just balance. How well you sleep and the number of hours you spend asleep, on average, adults need at least 7 hours a night, but how well you sleep can alter your appetite and feelings of hunger, as well as your body's ability to store and use energy, all of which can have a direct effect on your ability to maintain or lose weight. When you don't get enough sleep, or you have a sleep disorder, such as things like sleep apnea, it can throw your metabolism off kilter and lead to weight gain, or even a chronic illness. How does sleep help orchestrate these metabolic activities that play out in your everyday life? And what are the biggest consequences of poor or inadequate sleep on weight loss? Let's explore. Weight loss. Is it deeper than just calories in, calories out? The notion that calorie restriction alone will lead to long-term weight loss seems to be a little faulty. This simple strategy fails to consider the complex workings of our energy balance and its role on weight gain and loss. Beyond the number of calories a person eats or takes in, their hormonal responses, or in particular their insulin response, to the types of timing of foods that they consume, this will help determine the efficiency with which food is digested and processed, and whether or not it is stored as fat. A newly published research review explores this model in great depth and cites dozens of studies demonstrating how consumption of excess carbohydrates, particularly in the form of sugars and refined grains, how this prompts our bodies to store more fat. Insulin, the body's blood glucose regulator, is the crucial factor that drives this. It helps to ferry or push glucose into the muscle cells to be either burned or stored. But it also suppresses glucose production in the liver and aids in maintaining fat stores. Levels of circulating blood glucose trigger the rise and fall of insulin, such as when glucose levels are higher than we really need them for the body's energy demands. Insulin then also rises to signal to the body to use or to store glucose. It does not want that blood glucose in the blood. And when glucose levels fall, between meals or during sleep, then so does insulin levels drop too. That lowering of insulin, which increases another hormone called glucagon, is the body's signal to turn and burn stored energy, first glycogen and then fat. So it wants to take this stored energy of glycogen and then use the fat as fuel. One key take-home message here is that the body won't use its fat stores for energy while insulin levels are high. The body won't use its fat stores for energy while insulin levels are high, which means that anything that raises blood glucose, such as eating lots of carbs and sugar, this will make your weight loss harder. This finely tuned system, critical to maintaining a healthy weight, can get derailed. And high on the list of what can derail it is poor or an inadequate sleep. Poor sleep. How does sleep impact glucose, insulin, and metabolism? Well, accumulating research confirms that not getting enough sleep affects insulin levels and glucose metabolism in the body. Even a few nights of poor sleep can lead to higher fasting glucose and reduced insulin sensitivity, which means that your cells are less responsive to insulin, requiring your body to produce more of it to produce and to get that glucose into the cells. A study done in 1999, which is a little bit ago, a small laboratory study found that sleeping for just 4 hours a night for 6 nights in a row, this could play havoc with the metabolic and endocrine functions by increasing the time it took for blood glucose to be cleared after a high carb meal, reducing the rate of glucose clearance by 40%, and the acute insulin response to glucose by 30%. Large studies have been done where they have repeatedly found that people who are chronically sleep deprived are at higher risk for obesity. They make worse food decisions, and they have less willpower when tempted with these highly palatable, highly processed foods. The negative behavioral lifestyle choices are vast that happen from lack of sleep. Okay, so why does lack of sleep make your body less sensitive to insulin and less efficient at metabolizing blood glucose? So stick with me here. It's going to get a little sciencey, but I think we'll wrap it up in a summary all at the end. One culprit may be a reduction in slow wave sleep. Human sleep comprises of rapid eye movement, REM sleep, and then stages 1 through 3 of non-REM sleep. So stage 1, stage 2, stage 3 of non-REM sleep. The deepest stage of this non-REM sleep is stage 3, which is also called slow wave sleep or deep sleep. This is considered to be the most restorative phase. So during slow wave sleep, there are metabolic, hormonal, and neurophysiologic changes, meaning in your brain. This includes lowering of the use of glucose by the brain, stimulation of growth hormone release, and then also decreased sympathetic nervous system activity. So it decreases your fight or flight nervous system activity, which is good. That's what you want if you're looking to sleep as far as recovery is concerned. In one study, suppressing slow wave sleep for 3 nights in a row while keeping the total sleep time the same, unchanged, this resulted in a decrease in insulin sensitivity and glucose tolerance, similar to the ranges seen in older adults with impaired glucose tolerance. So they took these people, they made it so they slept the same amount of time, but they suppressed the slow wave sleep stage, and they had these effects with their blood glucose, negative effects. And the more significant the reduction in this slow wave sleep, the greater the decrease in insulin sensitivity. So it looked kind of like a linear progression here. The worse their deep sleep, the worse their insulin sensitivity got. Other likely factors caused by sleep deprivation disrupts insulin and glucose metabolism. This includes increasing your sympathetic fight or flight system. It can boost your insulin resistance, both directly in your tissues and indirectly through the release of pro-inflammatory cytokines, which are the immune system components that can interfere with insulin signaling. So as you lose this sleep, this deep sleep phase, now you're getting all sorts of cytokine inflammatory release, which can have a huge effect on your immune system. As little as 1 night of reduced sleep can increase a cytokine release. And shortened sleep causes the brain, which generally uses up to 20% of the body's glucose while at rest. Shortened sleep causes the brain to use less glucose, which leaves more glucose circulating in your blood. So you have this really, really active organ in your skull, and it uses up so much energy while you're thinking, while you're trying to process, while you're trying to run the systems of your body. But when you have short sleep, or in this case, less deep wave sleep, it has the brain use less glucose, which is a problem. Now you have all this glucose circulating in your blood. Sleep duration may also affect whether the body burns fat or muscle while on a diet. This is crazy. I think we've shared this multiple times in the podcast before. This study had two different groups of people. One group, they slept for 5.5 hours of short sleep, and they lost more non-fat mass, which was tissue like muscle. The group that got 5.5 hours of shortened sleep lost the same amount of weight as the group that slept for a full 8.5 hours, which was a nice full night of sleep. They both lost weight, but the group that got shortened sleep lost more muscle type tissue than the group that got 8.5 hours of sleep, which lost mostly body fat. They were both in a calorie deficit. They both got the same amount of calorie deficit meals, but their sleep decided whether they burned body fat or they burned muscle. The reason may be that the short sleepers also have higher levels of a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hunger-promoting hormone that encourages fat retention and glucose production by the liver. When I hear ghrelin, I think there's a little gremlin inside of you that is just causing you to be super hungry. The author of this study suggested that the lack of sleep changed the way a person's body uses different kinds of fuel, with short sleepers converting protein to glucose to meet their body's energy needs. That protein came from their lean tissue, like muscle. And in another study, among people who reduced their calories by 600 to 700 calories a day, which is a pretty aggressive cut, every extra hour of sleep was associated with 1.5 more pounds of fat loss. Let me say that again. Every extra hour of sleep that this group got, even though they were in a huge 600 to 700 calorie deficit, was associated with 1.5 pounds more fat loss. So this study suggests that if you are deciding to cut your calories and eat less food, if your goal is fat loss, sleep is 100% a make or break decision on your success. New research from the Mayo Clinic also connects sleep loss to the accumulation of dangerous abdominal fat, specifically fat around your abdomen, your midsection. In the study, 12 people were subjected to sleep deprivation, only got 4 hours of sleep a night, and they did this for a full 2 weeks. How would you like to be a part of that study? 12 people were subjected to sleep deprivation, 4 hours a night for a full 2 weeks. Researchers observed an 11% increase in visceral fat accumulation inside the abdomen, which subjects were sleep deprived, comparing to getting a full 9 hours of sleep. Meanwhile, the average weight gain during their sleep deprivation was 1 pound more than the control group in just that 2-week time period. They gained 1 pound more of fat. Visceral fat accumulation was increased, which visceral fat is the dangerous fat around your organs. It's not the kind that you pinch above your right below your skin. It's actually a lot more dangerous than that. That's crazy. Functional medicine doctor Rich Joseph points out that sleep deprivation has both acute, short-term, and chronic, long-term effects. Some consequences, such as reduced insulin sensitivity, may be transitory, while the longer-term impacts on weight gain and metabolic disruption may result from chronic sleep loss. Summary. Let's just summarize this. Sleep deprivation, consistently less than 7 hours a night on average, decreases insulin sensitivity, which increases insulin resistance. Not good. And hence, increases circulating insulin and blood glucose levels in your blood. Now, it's important to note that there's a wide range of variability here. We are all different biological creatures with different past experiences, with different genetic expressions. with different abilities to tolerate and rebound from different stresses. Just because this says consistently less than 7 hours for the average adult doesn't mean that that number is specifically for you. You could need more, you could need less. How do you know? This is exactly the same as when we talk about your food intake, when we talk about your non-exercise movement like your daily steps, when we talk about your mood and your energy and your stress management. You collect data. You track it through things like logging in a journal or tracking devices. You start by finding what your current average is, and is it getting you closer or further from your goals? Do you feel better or worse? Are you showing up as a better human being, or do you find that you're just getting through? Then, once you get this average data and you know what it's doing to you, then you make small changes for a period of time and see if that change trends in the way that you want it to, right? Does it take work? Yes, it's going to take work. Does it take time? Yes. Does it require consistency? Very much so. Is it challenging? Yes. But do you eventually find out and learn something about yourself that is so powerful and so important towards your finding your health and being a healthy, vibrant, fit, and happy person? 100%. And eventually, after tracking and finding awareness and figuring out what does work for you, you can then bring a more intuitive approach to the process. Tracking does not have to be forever. In fact, it shouldn't be. You will soon link healthy decisions to the way that you feel. And then over time, search out how to feel that way without tracking. But it takes the initial investment, which is a huge barrier for most people, and they find themselves permanently stuck behind this barrier, never able to get over it. They reach out to these experts that are trying to get information through this watered down version of what these experts and professionals see as their average client and what helps their average client. Could this information help you? Sure, it could possibly help you. Could it have zero application for you also? It could. What's the best way for you to find out? It's to take control of your own health. The effects of sleep on weight gain, eating behaviors, and food choices. Sleeping poorly can profoundly affect your diet, leading to a higher calorie intake and overconsumption of things like carbs and sugar the next day. A 2019 meta-analysis found that compared to normal sleepers, short sleepers were hungrier. They ate on average 250 more calories over the course of a day, and they put on weight. In one study, for instance, people who slept 4.5 hours a night for 4 nights had higher levels of hunger-sparking hormone called ghrelin. The following days after each meal, their ghrelin was increased. As a result, they consumed roughly 340 calories more, including more carbs and more sweet and salty snacks. And they did this more than when they slept for 8.5 hours. Very interesting. Elevated evening ghrelin levels seem to be linked to the short sleepers eating more sweet foods. So they got less sleep, this hunger hormone got released, and they seem to be eating more late night snacks, sweet foods. In studies where sleep was restricted and food is freely available, people tend to consume far more calories than they need to stay awake. So when they restrict sleep, but they give these people enough food, any food, it's freely available, people tend to eat far more calories than they needed to. Having more hours to eat in the day is one explanation. If you're awake longer, you have more time to eat. But research also points to the deactivation of brain networks involved in cognitive control and the activation of those involved in reward. In one study, sleep restriction reduced neural activity in 3 brain regions that are needed to optimally evaluate food stimuli when people reported wanting food, while also boosting neural activity in another region, the amygdala, that exaggerates the desirability of food. So can we say that a little more simply? When you lack sleep, you now have this region of the brain that has very little willpower to be able to decide if you need these foods or not. And then another region in your brain is starting to be more active when it comes to wanting desirable foods. That's not a good combo. In the same study, sleep deprivation also caused cravings for high-calorie snacks and junk food, these foods that promote weight gain. In addition, the more sleep-deprived the participants felt, the more of these foods that they desired, even though they were already consuming extra calories and didn't report feeling any hungrier than when they got good, adequate sleep. So they got less sleep, they were eating the same amount of food, but they felt hungrier and they wanted to snack on these high palatable foods. Interesting. This suggests the researchers note that sleep loss, as opposed to any metabolic need or hunger, produces these change. It's sleep that has the biggest factor. Lack of sleep may also cause people to eat at a time of day that goes against their biology. In another study, when people slept for only 5 hours a night and could eat whatever they wanted, they ate more carbs during the day and took in 42% more calories as after dinner snacks. 42% more calories as after dinner snacks. Consuming more calories after dinner than during any other individual meal. Nighttime snacking can be especially metabolically challenging. As bedtime approaches, the body's insulin levels decrease. The sleep hormone melatonin naturally rises. Staying up late can also push melatonin to be onset later, throwing off the whole 24-hour circadian clock, which may lead to eating more food at night. Epidemiologic cohort studies have repeatedly found that people who are chronically sleep deprived are at a higher risk of obesity, likely for all of the hormonal and metabolic shifts that we just discussed. In the meta-analysis of these studies, the risk of obesity went up 9% for every 1 hour fewer of sleep from the baseline of 7 to 8 hours. 9% every hour fewer. And the more limited the sleep duration, the greater the risk. Similarly, studies of hundreds of people that have examined the relationship between curtailed sleep and type 2 diabetes have found that those who sleep 5 to 6 hours a day, 5 to 6, have double the odds of prediabetes and type 2 diabetes compared with those who got the 7 to 8 hours a night. That's crazy. 5 to 6 hours. I know a ton of people that say that they operate just fine on 5 to 6 hours. In some studies, short sleep was a more significant risk factor than lack of physical activity. Let me read that again. In some studies, short sleep was a more significant risk factor than lack of physical activity. So what's worse, not sleeping or not working out? In some studies, short sleep was more significant than lack of physical activity. That is powerful. But there's also evidence that risk may be reversible. In a study of short sleepers who received personalized tips for sleep improvement, they increased their slumber time from 5.6 to 7.1 hours and experienced a significant decrease in overall appetite for their desired sweet and salty food cravings over that 2 weeks. Say that again. Short sleepers who received personalized tips for sleep improvement, all that they were offered was some personalized tips. They increased from 5.5 to 7 hours of sleep, which means that they then had less appetite for those really sweet and salty snacks. That's crazy. Now, in this article, they had a really cool chart that charted chronic sleep deprivation and how it is related to weight gain. Chronic sleep deprivation is broken down into 3 effects. One effect is that there's decreased insulin sensitivity. What that means is that you now have higher insulin levels, you now have higher blood glucose, blood sugar levels, and you increase your blood glucose production via the liver. With this decreased insulin sensitivity and all of those increased factors, you now have decreased use of stored body fat for energy, which will result in weight gain. Another portion of this chart, from chronic sleep deprivation, you now get chronic stress response. which increases your fight or flight activation. It increases your circulating cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and it increases your pro-inflammatory cytokines, which is for the immune system. All of that increases your adipose tissue storage, your fat tissue storage, which leads to weight gain. And then the third section of this chart, chronic sleep deprivation causes your appetite and your satiety levels to be dysregulated. You're hungry and you're all over the place when it comes to your cravings. And it also affects your neurocognitive disinhibition. Remember, your willpower, your brain's ability to decide if you should have snacks or not. With this, you now have increased energy consumption. You eat more and you have decreased nutrient-dense foods. You're eating crap. You're eating junk. All of that creates an excess energy balance. You're eating more than you're spending, which will lead to that weight gain. So chronic sleep deprivation messes with your insulin sensitivity, it messes with your stress response, and it messes with your appetite and your brain. All of those things going towards your weight gain. Other hormonal and metabolic changes that affect weight loss is affected by a complex interplay of hormones, and a number of these are affected by your sleep or lack of sleep. Let's touch on more detail about other metabolic factors that contribute to fat storage, to fat burning, to your hunger, your appetite, and your satiety, which all adjust depending on how well you sleep. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, manages your body's use of macronutrients, carbs, fats, protein. It increases your blood sugar, and it controls your sleep-wake cycle, among other activities. Sleep deprivation leads to increased cortisol production, the stress hormone, which can increase your fat storage under certain conditions and decrease insulin sensitivity the following day. Growth hormone. Growth hormone has a key role in the regulation of glucose, the breakdown of fats, and then protein creation. Growth hormone is secreted during non-REM sleep, slow wave sleep, and appears to be critical in maintaining our sleep-wake cycle. So when you don't get that deep wave sleep, your growth hormone can't do what it's meant to do. Leptin. Leptin is the opposite of ghrelin. Leptin is a hormone primarily secreted by fat cells, and it's thought to promote satiety and inhibit appetite. Along with its opposite hormone ghrelin, leptin keeps your appetite in balance. Research shows that leptin levels tend to be reduced with sleep deprivation, even when there is no change in activity levels or food intake. Lack of sleep seems to change leptin's ability to respond appropriately to the body's energy balance and signal satiety when energy needs have been met. Ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hunger-promoting hormone that's released primarily from the stomach. It has the opposite effect of leptin, increasing appetite and food intake. Circulating levels of ghrelin are naturally suppressed after eating, and then they rebound within a couple of hours, triggering a rise in hunger. Sleep loss of 2 to 3 hours a night, at least within typical sleep ranges from 9 to 6 hours, can lead to a rise in ghrelin and a drop in leptin, leading to increases in appetite and hunger and cravings for sweet, salty, and starchy, i.e. calorie-dense foods. Hormones produced in the brain's hypothalamus that are involved in wakefulness and energy balance are also affected by lack of sleep. These hormones become more active in response to decreased leptin and glucose and increased ghrelin. So when all these factors get put together, these hormones in the brain get released, and this increases your food intake and your energy expenditure. For those of you who want to know what they're called orexins, also known as hypocretins, which are just neuropeptides. These are proteins in the brain. These orexins also appear to inhibit the release of growth hormone. Summary, more simply put, chronic sleep loss can also disrupt the balance of appetite and satiety signaling and the hormones that cause those satiety signaling processes in the body, as well as neurocognitive processes that influence your eating behaviors, which can result in cravings for ultra-palatable, high-processed foods. This will increase your caloric consumption and over time, eventually lead to weight gain. So now for the practical part. I know that you've all been waiting for the practical part. That was a lot of science stuff, but I think it needed to be said. How to improve your sleep for optimal weight loss. We all need sleep. It's a biological necessity, but optimal sleep is a learned behavior. Take these 9 steps to improve your slumber to support a healthy weight. Number 1, aim for at least 7 hours of sleep per night. Now, keep in mind that 7 hours is the minimum recommendation by sleep researchers. You may need more than that for your best health. Set a time where your head is going to hit the pillow, and I mean all the lights are out, completely off. You want a complete dark room. Aim for at least 7 hours of sleep per night. Number 2, set a regular bedtime and wake up time, and resolve to stick with them. This means your weekdays and your weekend days look very similar when it comes to waking up. Inconsistent sleep timing throughout the week can raise that insulin resistance. Plus, trying to make up for lack of sleep during the work week by sleeping in and over the weekend can result in loading up on after dinner snacks, gaining weight, and experiencing reduced insulin sensitivity. And recent research suggests that post-weight loss, having a consistent bedtime may help you keep the pounds of fat off. Wow. Recent research suggests that post-weight loss, having a consistent bedtime may help you keep the pounds of fat off. Yes, there will be special events that don't allow you to do this 100% of the time, but that's life. Do your best most of the time and you'll be fine. Set a regular bedtime and a regular wake-up time. The wake-up time is more important, and resolve to stick with them. Number 3, avoid eating dinner close to bedtime and don't snack after your evening meal. Accumulating research suggests that finishing calorie intake for the night between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. is better for your metabolic health. According to Dorothy Sears, PhD professor of nutrition at Arizona State University, she says that if you finish your calories between 6 and 8 p.m., it's better for your metabolic health. This gives your body time to store the nutrients before your circadian controlled insulin action is impaired, in part by the evening rise in melatonin. This is one of the factors that I really struggle with. I get home from coaching around 8:30 and 9 p.m. It takes me about 30 minutes to get everything all settled and prepare the food, so I'm eating real late most nights. You have to do what's best for you. You have to adapt to what your lifestyle is, and then you just have to be smart about which health decisions you're going to compromise on and which you want to be super strict with. Only you can figure that out through trial and error and consistent tracking and adjusting. Number 4, keep in mind that what you eat can also affect your sleep. What you eat. Caffeine, alcohol, and spicy foods are known sleep disruptors. Research suggests that insomnia triggers may also include large amounts of added sugar and processed grains. Having more vegetables and fruit may act as an antidote to this. My rule for me is that I don't take caffeine past 2 p.m. Some people even say past noon. Also, if you get those carb cravings late at night, I prefer the combo of dark chocolate, at least 75% cacao, I do 95%, and berries. Strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, and my favorite, superfood, blueberries. Number 5, creating a daily light routine. Your sleep habits are affected by sunlight and darkness. Go outdoors to get some sunshine as soon as possible after you awaken. Professor Andrew Huberman from Stanford says that this is one of the most powerful ways to get your circadian clock right. You have to get outside even just for a few minutes right after you wake up. For me, I try to sit on the balcony with coffee or tea each morning. And then in the evening, you have to do the opposite. Dim the lights up to 2 hours before your bedtime and turn off all electronics, your phones, your tablets, your computers. This is going to encourage your parasympathetic, your rest and repair activation, and it's going to help with your sleep onset. When the sun goes down, then so should all of your lights. Dim the lights as much as possible without being weird. Take your screen's brightness down as low as possible, or even considering no screens at all. For me, I'm not there yet with the total shutdown of electronics, but I do my best. Number 6, stop vigorous exercise an hour before bedtime. Vigorous exercise. Now, exercise even during the evening can have a very calming effect and help your mind relax and prepare for sleep. For me, I love doing slow, mind to muscle connected weightlifting at night. I always have. I used to be the only person in my small gym at Anytime Fitness back in home at like 9, 10, sometimes even 11 p.m. back in Oregon. Some of my most memorable moments were from back then, but a vigorous workout too close to bedtime, it may not allow time for your heart rate to slow down, resulting in delayed sleep, poor sleep quality, and nighttime awakenings. So if you're doing high intensity interval training or any type of exercise that gets you really ramped up, give yourself time to come down from those activities before your bedtime routine starts. What are we on? Number seven, set up your bedroom for sleep, a sleep sanctuary. Set the temperature to be cool, close all the shades and the curtains, blackout curtains if you can, create the darkest environment possible. Invite your dogs and your pets to settle down in their own beds. Your sleep environment is so important. It should be a place where only sleep and sex happen. If you watch TV or do other work in the same space that you sleep, you are creating a neural association in your brain with work in that area of your house, whether you're mentally aware of it or not. Get your TV out of the room, get your phone out of the room. This has been a game changer for me. Number 8, mitigate thought or anxiety-related insomnia. This is a huge one. Use tools like journaling, meditation, or breath work, or reading to help calm your mind before bed. I know a lot of us really don't enjoy this, but hear me out. When you go to bed, if you're someone that always has your mind racing, it's probably because your brain is trying to figure out and schedule and predict what's to come. If you have all of these things in your head just swirling around, your brain is going to race and continue to scream at you until it's satisfied. So what I've done is I now take a simple journal, and on the left side of the journal, I write out all the tasks that I want to get done the following day. I write down that I'm going to coach. I write down that I'm going to see a coach and give them feedback. I'm going to create a social media post for this topic or that topic tomorrow. I'm going to train. I need to get my car washed. I'm going to meditate. I'm going to clear out the dishwasher. All of the things that I need to do that day that I can think of, I just make a list. It doesn't have to be in any order. I just list it out. Then on the right side of the journal, I take this list and I create a rough draft schedule from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I write down when I'm going to wake up. 7:30 is usually my default time. I want to wake up at the same time every day, so 7:30 is the time that I strive to wake up for, unless I coach the early morning sessions, and then it has to be earlier, but I just do the best that I can. Then I take every single item on that list on the left, and I insert it into the schedule on the right. I say that after I wake up, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to do that for 15 minutes, and then I'm going to go take this coach's session at 8:30, and I'm going to give them feedback. After that, I'm going to drive my car to the car wash, and then I'm going to coach, and then I'm going to train at this time, and then I'm going to empty the dishwasher, and so on and so forth. I write down, and I get a semi-clear picture of the best timeline that makes the most sense, that allows me to get every single one of my tasks done in that time period tomorrow. Now I have all of that stuff out of my brain. It's not predicting anything. It knows. My head hits the pillow and I am out. My Oura Ring even says that I sleep maybe too fast, which means that I probably exhaust my body a little bit too much, but hey, whatever. Maybe you ruminate on relationships. If something in your head is always going on about the relationships that you have, your spouse, your friends, your coworkers, then maybe you could just journal on that. Get those thoughts out of your head and onto paper and see how your sleep might be impacted. And then number 9, lastly, if you're struggling to sleep after all of these tips still, you might have to consider seeing a sleep specialist or a coach. Sleep disorders like obstructive sleep apnea are pervasive and can magnify the effects of sleep deprivation, resulting in a vicious cycle of weight gain. A sleep specialist can determine whether you have a disorder, and they can help you address it and to improve your health and your sleep. You might not even know it, but I've heard tons of stories about people that wake up like 100 times every hour, and they are physically choking and they don't even know it. That could kill you years and years earlier than you should be living for. That is a serious, serious thing. If you're not ready for a sleep specialist or a coach, you can still educate yourself. There are tons of books like Sleep Smarter from Sean Stevenson, Why We Sleep from Matthew Walker. Sachin Panda wrote a good book called The Circadian Code. And then I've saved up like 50 to 75 different podcast masterclass episodes, all saved on my phone. If you want me to send you any of those, let me know. But if you're doing all things right in your life that you think, and you're still getting bad sleep, you're still waking up exhausted, you might be struggling with a disorder. You got to get help. So if you're struggling with weight loss and can't figure out why, and you know your sleep is not where it needs to be, now is the time, friends. It's not easy, but some of these steps to get there are fairly straightforward and simple. If you can nail this huge pillar of health, so many things in your life will start to fall in place. And that's it, my friends, for this week's Megaphone episode. Each week, we're going to focus on sharing information that will help you with your health, fitness, and wellness journey. Share the knowledge that you gained with your friends, your family, and hold each other accountable. If you enjoyed this content, it helps a ton if you could post on your social media stories a screenshot of this episode with one takeaway, one thing that you learned, and make sure you tag me and share your journey. Tag me at Livin the Dream _podcast or at Coach Damien _SD. And let us know how this episode benefited you. Let's get more people on this lifelong learner train and join the Livin the Dream team. Message us if you have any suggestions or tips that will help your team that we can discuss on future episodes. I will be right here with you, making us stronger, happier, and healthier humans. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.